In 2025, Donald Trump returned to the White House, reigniting his America First agenda. Almost immediately, his administration zeroed in on Canada and the USMCA trade deal, one he'd once celebrated. This wasn't about economic data, it was a political move to show his base he was fighting for American workers. Trump now argued the USMCA didn't give the US enough power, especially over dispute settlement panels that limited his ability to impose tariffs. He demanded Canada agree to dismantle these panels, giving the US president unchecked authority to slap tariffs on Canadian goods. The administration framed this as protecting sovereignty, but critics saw it as a power grab, an attempt to let the US dictate terms unilaterally. By targeting the USMCA, Trump was challenging the foundation of rules-based trade. Canada, led by new Prime Minister Mark Carney, faced a dilemma: accept US demands and risk economic chaos, or refuse and face American pressure. The Canadian economy, deeply tied to the US, was suddenly at risk. Accepting Trump's terms would mean massive uncertainty. Refusing could trigger a trade war. The world's longest undefended border was about to become the front line in a high-stakes confrontation. The stage was set for a showdown that would test both countries' resolve. Canada refused to cave, so Trump escalated, publicly threatening a sweeping 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. His rhetoric was fierce, accusing Canada of betrayal and vowing to crush their economy if they didn't comply. The reasons for tariffs kept shifting. In July, Trump announced a 35% tariff, blaming Canada for fentanyl entering the US. Despite data showing most fentanyl came from Mexico, the accusation seemed like a pretext to invoke emergency powers and justify tariffs. Trump's threats were personal and unpredictable. Even a pro-trade ad in Ontario triggered a threat to raise tariffs to 45%. The message: any resistance would be met with harsher penalties. Ottawa was left guessing, as Trump's demands and justifications changed by the day. Trump issued ultimatums. If Canada retaliated, he'd double down with even higher tariffs, threatening to halt trade entirely. The strategy was clear: force Canada to surrender through economic coercion, not negotiation. Trade talks became a test of strength, not diplomacy. The US-Canada relationship was now a high-stakes game of brinkmanship. The world watched as diplomacy gave way to threats. Under relentless pressure, Canada chose a different path: calm, measured, and strategic. Prime Minister Carney avoided public feuds, projecting stability in contrast to Washington's chaos. Behind the scenes, Canada prepared targeted retaliatory tariffs, focusing on products from politically sensitive US states, like bourbon from Kentucky and dairy from Wisconsin. The aim: create pressure on Trump from within his own party. Canada also began pivoting away from US dependence, announcing new trade initiatives with Europe and Asia. This wasn't just about the current crisis, it was a long-term strategy to diversify and reduce vulnerability. The dual approach, public calm, private preparation, proved effective. Trump was denied the spectacle he craved, while US business leaders and senators started to worry about the impact of Canadian retaliation. Internal pressure on Trump grew as key industries and donors voiced concern. Canada's quiet strength sent a powerful message: retaliation would be smart, targeted, and relentless. The US administration now faced not just a foreign adversary, but domestic backlash. Canada's response became a model of modern diplomacy: quiet, strategic, and effective. The trade war was no longer just about tariffs, it was about political leverage. The threat of tariffs sent shockwaves through both economies. The North American auto sector, built on cross-border supply chains, was hit first. Plants in Michigan and Ohio faced disruptions as parts from Ontario stalled. Manufacturers paused production and reconsidered investments, casting uncertainty over entire regions. US farmers, reliant on Canadian markets, panicked as the threat of retaliation loomed. Wheat exports to Canada had already plummeted in earlier disputes. Builders in Texas canceled orders for Canadian lumber. Energy traders braced for shocks to oil supplies. Consumer prices climbed as tariffs and uncertainty rippled through the economy. Inflation hit 3% by September, with grocery bills rising and retailers passing costs to customers. The closure of a century-old Michigan furniture maker, citing Trump's tariffs, underscored the real-world pain. Anxiety spread as business leaders faced a landscape of threats and unpredictability. The Dow dropped 250 points after the July tariff announcement, reflecting market nerves. Polls showed growing public frustration with rising prices and instability. The economic fallout was no longer abstract, it was felt by workers, farmers, and families across America. The trade war's costs were mounting, and patience was wearing thin. The stakes had never been higher for both nations. The trade war exposed deep divisions within the Republican Party. Trump's protectionism clashed with the party's free trade tradition, leaving lawmakers torn between loyalty to the president and their constituents' economic interests. Senators from key states faced pressure from business leaders and donors alarmed by instability. Moderates feared political fallout from rising prices and job losses, while Trump loyalists pushed for escalation. The party split into two camps, pragmatists urging caution, and nationalists demanding confrontation. The conflict became a test of Trump's control and the party's future direction. The tariff fight with Canada forced Republicans to confront a question they'd long avoided: free markets or economic nationalism. The dispute soon moved to the courts. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce filed a lawsuit, arguing Trump's use of emergency powers to impose tariffs on Canada was an abuse of authority. They claimed the fentanyl crisis was a pretext and that only Congress could regulate foreign commerce. Conservative legal experts joined in, warning that letting a president declare a national emergency for trade set a dangerous precedent. Judge J. Michael Luttig called the move a direct attack on constitutional checks and balances. The legal battle became a test of whether American democracy could withstand executive overreach. The outcome would shape the limits of presidential power for years to come. The Canada conflict fit a familiar Trump pattern, demanding loyalty, punishing defiance. Allies were expected to comply, not negotiate. Past officials who crossed him, Sessions, Tillerson, Bolton, were publicly attacked. Now Canada's refusal to dismantle USMCA panels was cast as betrayal. The fight was less about trade details and more about personal loyalty. Diplomacy became transactional. Alliances were conditional. The message to other allies, history and partnership mattered less than immediate obedience. The U.S. foreign policy landscape grew more unpredictable and unstable. The 2025 trade war with Canada became a test of American democracy and global alliances. Trump's use of emergency powers to target a peaceful ally raised fundamental constitutional questions. Legal challenges and conservative criticism underscored the stakes. Would the executive branch gain unchecked power? A court victory for Trump could permanently shift the balance, weakening Congress and the rule of law. The conflict also shattered trust between the U.S. and Canada, straining a century-old partnership. Canada paused cooperation on security and defense, showing the fallout went beyond economics. The crisis was a warning. Democratic norms and alliances are fragile, easily upended by aggressive executive action. The future depended on whether mutual respect and the rule of law could be restored.